All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we are live. It is 4:20. We are here to talk MLB DFS for the Monster Tuesday night slate. We got ourselves a 13-gamer. And word to the wise for a couple of you guys. It does start a little bit early, so just keep your eyes peeled. I think it's like 20 minutes earlier than normal, half hour or something like that. So just keep that in the back of your mind when setting lineups today that you got to be a little bit more prepped than normal.
Didn't even ask you. I know we've talked a little bit recently about how the slates, mostly start at 7. They've added, these 6:30 games. Do you like how DK just made it start at 6:30, or would you have preferred they just cut those games out? I don't know how many start at 6:30, so that might not be a fair question.
Well, I like the big slate, so I was glad that they started it. There's some good games early and stuff like that too. So I was happy that they did that for today. Now, some days I will disagree with that, but for today, I was happy about it.
I think the other thing about today is I do think a bunch of them start early. So not just one or two. I think 5 or 6 start in that 6:30 Eastern range.
Yeah, I just checked the MLB schedule yesterday as opposed to going to DraftKings, and I saw there was 6 or 7 games or whatever it was. So I figured they would do this today.
Cool.
All right, guys. So today's show is sponsored by our friends over at Drafters. 9 days left to go to get in on the Monster Overlay contest. Their NFL best ball contest, only a $5.50 buy-in, $30,000 in prizes. It ain't getting close to filling. I don't say let's fill it. Let's get some entries in though, because your odds of making money are good, real good. So if you're missing the NFL like most people, I do a couple of drafts, $5.50, $30,000 in prizes. And I want to announce congratulations to Papa Steve Casey, for taking down the DFS 5-pack 7-man draft we did yesterday. Sucks to be you, man. 1 point away from Brian Spencer for second place, but Steve ran away with it last night, so congratulations. We will try to draft again today. Come draft with us. Promo code to sign up is DFS 5-pack, but whether you use us or not to sign up, come get in the drafters pool. We do these daily drafts, and they're a blast.
So, yeah, congrats to Steve. Nice job. Really, a shame I was to point out. Paul DeYoung was huge, and I remember when we drafted yesterday, I made the comment to you about how I liked St. Louis. I thought they were going a little bit under the radar. I took Goldschmidt, thinking Arenado would fall. Goldschmidt was really good. But Steve also liked St. Louis, and he took, had some really good pieces. DeYoung, obviously. And yeah, Dustin May wasn't very good for me either.
Also, guys, if you're looking to get an NBA skin, and in this time of the year, I get daily messages on every social media platform about how people can't stand DraftKings and FanDuel NBA right now because of all the changing. It doesn't affect you on drafters as much because yesterday was a little bit different, but mostly you're playing with studs and mid-tier type of guys. So if you want to play NBA DFS, but you're like me and really waiting for the playoffs to go heavier again, this is a good way to get NBA skin without having to deal with as many late scratch things.
Amen.
All right, monthly memberships, weekly memberships available through the website. Subscribe to the station if you are new to it. Let's talk about some of the plays we're looking at today. So we've done a lot of the low-hanging fruit this year from a pitching perspective because, it's just easier to talk about. And a lot of the low-hanging fruit is crushed this year. So there hasn't really been any reason to get away from it from a MLB perspective. Even though he gave up a couple solo shots last night, we talked to Musgrove. He was awesome last night with 13 Ks against my Brewers. We wanted to get off the beaten path a little bit today when we talk about pitching. So we're going to go all the way to the bottom. Also, the chalk guys are obvious, and we've talked about them every slate they've been on today. I would encourage everybody to watch the weather in Cincinnati as one of the chalk SPs comes in that game. So it is possible you may have to get off the beaten path yourselves. But Brad Keller of the Kansas City Royals is massively underpriced at $5,400. So Keller's not a huge strikeout guy. He's more like a 7 Ks per 9 type of feller. Not a huge upside guy. But he does get Tampa Bay today, who is the 3rd highest strikeout rate team. And I believe they were number 1 last year or close to the top. So this is not a new thing. This is a great pitcher's park in Kansas City. Also, if you saw his first start against Texas, he was god-awful. But Brad Keller's a good pitcher. Go look at the numbers for his first 3 seasons in the MLB. Yeah, he's not Jacob deGrom. He's not Shane Bieber, but most guys aren't going to be that guy. He's a good pitcher. I expect 15-ish DK points from him tonight. And while that's not slate-winning type of stuff, look at the offense you can build with a guy as a 5,400 pitcher. He's got a decent leash. I think this is a really good points per dollar play. You don't feel safe like this when you run Garrett Cole out there, but that's the case for most guys.
Yeah, he's far too cheap, especially when considering how other guys are priced. Keller hasn't been great this year. He was very good his last time. I actually liked him a little bit against the Angels.
He was god-awful in that first start.
For sure. But we know, I mean, listen, at the start of the season, that happens sometimes. We saw the same thing with Luis Castillo. That happens. Guys will have off starts, and sometimes it happens at the beginning of the year, whether they're not locating, whether they just don't have a great feel, whatever the reason may be. Coming off a good start last time out, you mentioned it. There's two chalky starters on this slate, and we like those guys. We're not bringing Keller up as like necessarily a pivot off those guys, but a guy that you can throw in the rotation because he's much better than this price tag implied. He's in a high strikeout upside spot against Tampa. And we kind of played around a little bit with roster construction. If you spend down on Keller, and maybe don't spend all the way up on your other pitcher, you can roster basically everyone you want. Keller is less than a bunch of hitters on this slate. I mean, there's just no reason he should be like close to 5K. I get it. He shouldn't be expensive, but he shouldn't be this cheap.
Yeah, he had a really, really bad first start against Texas, and that's going to affect his numbers for a long time. This is a guy who had a sub-3 ERA last year. He had an excellent rookie season, a mediocre sophomore campaign. He's an above-average MLB pitcher, not like a great pitcher by any stretch of the imagination, but he's a lot better than a lot of the guys priced ahead of him.
I didn't even bring this up, but I think you'll completely get on board with this point. We don't talk baseball like lines too much, like betting lines, but I look at it all the time. This is Rich Hill versus Brad Keller. Like, Brad Keller's priced like an absolute gas can today. I mean, he's priced like an awful starter. This game's a pick'em game. Like, when you have guys priced like 5K, they're usually big underdogs for good reason.
Yeah, I would encourage everybody who maybe doesn't know a lot about Brad Keller, go to the old Google machine, Bing it, whatever you want to do, check it out. But just look at the numbers for Brad Keller, his first 3 seasons at a professional level. Like, he is not a gas can. He had a terrible first start, and you see that ERA of just under 10 and that whip of 2.42. Those are god-awful numbers, but we're 3 starts into the year, and he was terrible in his first one. This is a pretty good pitcher, a guy who would be, the number 3 guy in a lot of people's rotations, the number 2 guy in some really bad pitching staff rotations. So he's just mispriced today in the high strikeout guy, in a high strikeout matchup. He's not going to strike out 10 guys a lot, but today's the kind of day where you could easily get 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah, and as you also mentioned, he's definitely no lock, and you don't feel safe about it, but he's too cheap, regardless of what happens tonight. He's too cheap.
We got a lot of high-priced, 2-man stacks that we like tonight. And again, we know who the top pitcher on the slate is. Everybody does. But he's expensive. If you think maybe he's only mediocre by his standards today, and you feel fine giving up maybe 10 to 15 points of upside right here, think about where your offense can go. Like you said, on members only, we played around with a lot of these big, pricey 2-man stacks. Guys, 2-man stacks that have 50-point potential between the 2 of them. And by paying down on pitching, you get that ability. You've said this in a couple of members only videos lately. Hitting is generally where you win GPPs. You don't want negative from your pitching because that's going to detract from you, but I don't expect negative from Keller today. I expect double digits. Not high-end double digits, but I think he's going to get you 15 points today.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you need pitching. You need your pitching to be good enough, obviously, to be competitive in tournaments. But hitting is ultimately what takes you over the top. And I was thinking about this last night, when I had Musgrove left, but not many hitters. And I'm like, the floor-wise, I'm in a great spot to get more points, 20 to 25 more points. And that's probably going to be added to my score. And if the bats don't really do well, I'm probably going to move up. However, the bats have a chance of getting, 50 points because bats are just so much more volatile than pitching is.
Amen. Next up, let's talk about some hitters. So
we are not usually right now, by the way. It just went off, I think.
Okay, well, let's try something different then.
Much as I like seeing your face, I'd rather screen share.
Sure. All right, let's try this again. How's that?
Still nada.
I'm going to try this one more time.
I see it. It's weird though. I'm looking at. I think you know what? It is working. Just for me, it might not be showing. I can't confirm that, but we can just roll with it. Check after.
All right, guys. Sorry about this. We will.
I'm seeing it now.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about baseball and let's talk about offense now. So usually when I go through cash lock, I'm going to go through like chalkier players. I do not expect this young man to be a chalky-ish player today. But for me, he's close to a lock in almost any format that I play today, and that is Bryce Harper. And I want to reiterate, this is coming from one of the number one Bryce Harper haters, truther, whatever you want to call it. I find him to be one of the more overrated players we've ever gone through because it's lessened over the years, but people have often talked about him in the same breath as Mike Trout when he doesn't deserve to be there. The flip side of that is when Bryce Harper locks in, when he starts seeing the ball really, really well, like he clearly is right now, he is just as good as the Mike Trouts and Ronald Acuñas of the world, Mookie Betts, you name it. And right now, over the past 3 days, Bryce Harper is feeling it. Last night, your boy Gausman was good. But Bryce Harper still went 3 for 3. Now, 3 solid singles, stole a base. And 3 for 3 with 3 singles is not amazing. But when your opponent is feeling it from a pitching perspective, it's actually a pretty nice day. And he threw in a stolen base on top of that. And while he's not going to run like Acuna, when he starts getting singles and walks, he will throw in the occasional stolen base. We talked about Tommy Pham yesterday, and one of the things we liked about him is if he got on, he would try to steal. Now, he just missed on his stolen base attempt, and that'll happen from time to time. But when Bryce Harper is a floor play like he is, when he's taking his walks and getting his singles, when he can't take it out of the yard, the fact that he's willing to run and throw in the occasional 5-point bonus in there is just another feather in your cap. I like Harper a lot tonight. He is going to be a priority for me on all formats. When this guy feels it like he is at the plate right now, he gets on base more than 50% of the time. So he's got a nice floor. And with the upside that he has right here, he gives me a solid combination of both floor and upside.
Yeah, I mean, he looks great right now. You mentioned yesterday, like, only 3 singles, whatever. Like, he was right on the baseball every at bat. Sometimes, and that's baseball, right? The difference between baseball and like the NBA, and we talk about this a lot. A guy can be really, really good like Bryce Harper was yesterday. But if you don't hit a home run, your DK scores might not necessarily be there. Like, if you watch his at-bats, which I did last night, I mean, right on the ball. You mentioned it, seeing the ball really well. One of the best overall hitters on the slate. I think you can look at Philly stacks, but even if you don't like Philly as a whole, I mean, Bryce Harper looks like a great one-off in all formats.
Absolutely. I think he works in all formats because he has the floor when he's playing like this. For me, of just being a guy, I don't care if he's owned or not owned. I can play him in cash games. But also, since today's a full-on GPP day for me, I'm going to have a lot of exposure to him today.
For sure.
All right, next up. So speaking, one of the reasons we talked on Brad Keller was we had some upper-priced mini stacks that we like, and one of them is going to be the national guy, starting with Trey Turner.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he just is – you talked about this like with Trevor Story a couple of years ago, as much upside as basically anyone on any given day. I feel like Trey Turner's kind of taken the reins from him in that regard because he's just in a better lineup now than Story is. And that's really hurting Story this year, which is another video for another day. Go ahead.
I was just thinking, like, you like to have at least a 2-man stack, right? Like, I can one-off Bryce Harper today, but I like to complement him with another player so you can get 2-run home runs. You can get back-to-back doubles. Well, Turner has it. He's got a pretty good guy that hits right next to him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the best 1-2 combos in all baseball. There's another one I know you love today that the two-man combos in the NL East are probably the 2 best in baseball when all is said and done. Turner and Soto right on top there. We mentioned it. We expect both Turner and Soto to be above double-digit DK points by the time all is said and done. Great spot against Wainwright, who Washington has some success against. Wainwright has not been great at all this year. He's worse at night. I like the Washington stack quite a bit here. I don't think they're getting much love. Turner's always a top piece, and nothing's different tonight.
Exactly. So not only does Wainwright struggle more in night games, he struggles away from St. Louis. So when you want to pick on Adam Wainwright, who, he's not the perennial Cy Young candidate he once was, but he's still capable of good starts. They typically come at home and in day games. At night on the road is when he tends to struggle. Now, does that mean he struggles at night? Of course not. Baseball doesn't work that way, but it's when you want to pick on him is usually on the road in night games. You mentioned it. Trey Turner owns the upside. I mean, it's as high as Mookie Betts or Juan Soto or Ronald Acuna. Why? Because he does have decent power. 4 bombs already this year. This is a guy who is also playing really, really well. Broke the slate on Sunday. Well, last night he had to go up against one of the better pitchers in the game in Jack Flaherty. And, yeah, he didn't have a monster game. That'll happen when you go up against aces. There's no shame in that. Today, he doesn't have to deal with that. So, again, not getting a lot of love today. I like him as part of a mini Washington stack.
What's funny is that like a lot of the Washington lineup did get to Flaherty a little bit yesterday. He wasn't great. They made him work.
Yeah. Give up 2 runs, right?
He gave up 2 earned runs, but I think 5 total runs.
Okay. I thought those came against relievers, but I wasn't watching it as closely as you were, so I'm going to trust you on this one over me. All right. Next up. So now I'm going to go with a little more chalk for my cash games. And second base doesn't have a premier like spend up spot for me. So I want to get down into the 3s at the very minimum. I'm going to take a look at Jeff McNeil of the New York Mets. So I really liked the Mets when I woke up this morning and I was looking through this slate. The only thing that keeps me off of going on them harder is the fact that Wrigley, the weather in Chicago today is more advantageous for pitching than for hitting. However, I don't mind like a one-off of a Jeff McNeil because he's cheap. Despite the fact that his numbers on the year aren't very good, he's a solid hitter. He's really, really good against Jake Arrieta, 15 to 26. And this allows me to spend up on others. He's also currently projected as a chalkiest second baseman. So for me, this is decent chalk. It gives me the ability to get better hitters and better pitchers in other spots. And it's just somebody I kind of feel like is going to go out there today, give you like a ho-hum 8-point performance, and you can just ride the chalk in this one.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, listen, it's solid but not spectacular. Solid if not spectacular, excuse me. But really cheap, 3,600 in a sneaky good spot against Arrieta. You think he's going to be chalkier? I mean, I imagine he gets some love because he's so affordable, but I don't think people are going out of their way to play Jeff McNeil when I don't think the Mets are stacked that much.
He's projected as the highest owned second baseman in the morning. Again, obviously those numbers can change throughout the day. I do think that the BVP is overwhelming at 15 to 26. I don't think second base is obscenely strong today. So people will try to get down here. And when you get a guy who, again, he's a good hitter, not a great hitter, but he's 15 to 26 off Arrieta, and he's, in the mid 3s at a position that's not as strong.
For sure. I get it. I get all your points. I got no arguments.
And we all know who's chalk today from a team perspective. They don't have their top second baseman, too. So I think, while everybody stacks that, this is a spot where they'll just be a little bit different.
Good point.
All right, next up, it's time to Upton funk you up.
Yeah, coming off a night in which the Angels were chalky and let a lot of people down, they're not going to get any love against Lyles here. Upton was one bright spot last night. Homered. I've mentioned this a bunch in our members-only videos. I've seen all his at-bats, not all his at-bats, but a lot of his at-bats this year. He looks good. Upton's notoriously a streaky guy, and while his average and DK points not be there every day, he's right on the baseball. Very affordable at 3,500 with big power upside. He's got good numbers off Lyles. A lot to like here at what I expect to be very low ownership.
Yeah, I think you're going to get him in the 10% range because his price tag is low. But he's still he's a guy people like, you know what I mean? Because when he came up, whatever that was, 10, 11 years ago, this is a guy everybody thought was going to turn into an MVP. Okay, well, that never sufficed. But when he's playing well, like he is right now, like you mentioned, when he's seeing it well, he has upside up there with the greats in the game. He is always capable of hitting, 2 home runs in a game. And while he doesn't steal like he once did, he can still throw in the occasional stolen base to boot. Priced in the mid 3s, going to be right in the middle of that lineup tonight with Ohtani not hitting. I think he's a nice upside play in GPPs.
I agree.
And while maybe he'll get 10%'s not 1% or anything like that, but it's still low enough that when you get a nice performance from him, it does start to separate you from a large percentage of the pack.
For sure. Good call there.
So I like him today. And honestly, when he's playing like this, I know he's a streakier player, but he's going up against Jordan Lyles. We don't fear Jordan Lyles at all. I'm fine with him in cash games. He's the kind of guy that he can win you your cash lineup by himself.
Definitely. And I'm kind of feel similarly about him as I do Harper. Obviously, Harper on a much larger scale, but fine with him as a one-off. I also don't mind the Angels here as a stack.
Yeah, amen to that one, because they will, again, be lower owned today because they let down a lot of people last night.
Yep.
That's kind of a Bellman special, if I were to say that. Go to a team that is chalky the day before in a similar spot, but everybody used them yesterday. They let everybody down. And today, their chance of success is the same as it was yesterday, only their ownership is, 1/5 of what it was.
Amen to all that.
So, All right, guys. Good luck today. We'll talk NBA in a little bit. Have yourself a wonderful Tuesday, and thanks for watching.
Thanks, guys.